All right, we're back here at Golden Vessels, and man, we've had some fun convos, and today we're going to go into the topic of community, people, relationships, and how it impacts not just your physical health, but your spiritual health, and all the craziness and fun things that happen from it if you have community or if you don't have community, and what do healthy relationships look like. And we'll see if we get enough time to go into all that stuff. But I know that me and Alex are going to share some of our stories of our experience of where we lived, because we both grew up in a small town, kind of middle of nowhere, Midwest, and there's a type of culture there, living there, that we're going to kind of go into. And then we moved to the big city of Dallas, Fort Worth, the big, huge area of like millions of people, and it's kind of like a culture shock. So we're going to go into that today, but what do you got for us, Alex?
Community, yeah. We're talking about this as a general community, so like church family and just like that effect it has on your health. So I haven't told my full story on in like a public online setting, but a very short abridged version, like SparkNotes version, is I grew up in a family deep in the occult, and I dealt with a lot of satanic ritual abuse. And I was very isolated before I came here. I'm originally from Fargo, North Dakota. That's what he was talking about when he's talking about small towns. So I was like from a mid-sized town in the Midwest, and you're from a really small town of like less than 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's
But
like 10 miles to 300 people.
yeah, that's
Middle
not
of nowhere,
much.
nowhere.
But you're right. There is a certain culture there. I'll talk about that aside from my own family, because that's like another extreme level into like isolation. But yeah, in the Midwest, there's this culture of very like mundane, I guess like mediocrity, or like middle of the road conservative, where like you're not really passionate, you're not really driven about anything. You're just kind of like doing things because that's the way you grew up, that's the way your parents grew up, and you're like, well, that's just the way things are. You're like, we don't want to worry about those people on the coasts. They're a little too far out there, you know. Like, you ever heard that before? But like all the coastal regions are the weird people, and like we're the normal ones over here. We get things right. And there's this like kind of very isolated, we just get together and talk about the weather and current events type of
Oh my God.
type of thing. And it really, I didn't realize until I moved here, but I essentially didn't have a community because I just wasn't connected to a church right away after I got, we're going to get a little bit into my story, but I grew up Catholic, also being in the occult, so that's a whole nother story. Hiding in the Catholic Church, essentially. And then I got saved when I was around 16. And then after I stopped going to Catholic Church in 2020 during the shutdowns, I was really isolated. It was really not knowing what I was going to do next, because I knew that I didn't really agree with what was going on in the Catholic Church, and I didn't know if I should be like, am I going to be Baptist now? Like, what is happening?
Hold on. You went from like, man, I got to get out of this Catholic thing, but you're like, the first thought goes, I guess I got to go Baptist. Is that
That's
the
just
process?
like what comes to my mind when I think of like Protestant, or like, it's either Lutheran or like Baptist. Those are
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of denominations in my head about what exactly everyone believed. So I'm like, I don't know, Baptists believe in what I believe. So I mean, maybe I'll just go there. But I had quite a few spiritual experiences going through a long process of deliverance while in isolation. I essentially found out my family was in the occult during that time. And then I started to go through a very intense deliverance process. A lot of encounters with God, a lot of encounters with the Holy Spirit, but still alone, very isolated. And that was for a reason, because my family was essentially like controlling some other relationships in my life, and I didn't have a community outside of that. So when I got separated from the abusive environment, then I didn't have anything. So a couple years into that isolation, after being filled with the Holy Spirit, praying more, receiving the gifts of the Holy Spirit, really encountering God a lot, I started getting the impression to move here to DFW. Started like hearing and seeing it, and getting confirmed over like the next 6 months at least. And it would be another year before I moved here. I moved here in 2022, at the end of 2022. And it was a massive shock right away to be at the place where I'm at now. He told me exactly what church to go to, and I just picked up and moved here. And so there's first of all the culture shock of just being from somewhere else, being from the Midwest, but also coming out of the background that I do in the occult is just massive overload. I didn't know what to do with myself. Everyone was always asking exactly what was going on in my life, and I didn't know how to respond. And I was like, I don't remember my childhood. I don't know what to tell you. What do you want? I told you everything already. But I could tell that it was right. I could tell that these people were really loving here at the church that I became a part of, and I knew that if I stayed here, I would heal, but I had a lot of issues with just shutting down completely when in front of people. So the thing about being from the Midwest was kind of minor to me. People down here just hug you more often. People, that's people from the north don't do that when they greet you. They just say hi. There's no physical greeting. Maybe one of my friends from high school was a hugger, maybe, and he was an anomaly. But down here, literally everyone will grab a hug every time they see you, and maybe it's a Southern hospitality thing. But as far as community goes, as my healing journey is concerned, that's been the most deliverance I have received. So there's been the supernatural power encounters with things coming out of me. You've been there for a lot of that. There's been a lot that's taken out of me through deliverance, and then there's the things that happen in the place of prayer alone with God, and all those things are needed. Those are pieces of the puzzle that are necessary, but a massive amount of deliverance has just come from being around people in a community that truly love each other and love me. Even if I could intellectually see that right away, I couldn't act like it because all those things were still on the inside. All the trauma and the abuse and all of the systems were still at work. But being or coming from a family that was very abusive, and an environment just in general, everyone around the family who was involved in it, at least just being conditioned to being manipulated, other people control you in some way, whether it's with fear or with emotional manipulation or just straight up threat. Being around people who are the opposite of that over the period of several years is where the most amount of healing has come for me, because there's those one-time off power encounters, there's the daily deliverance with God, but that was the only thing that could reprogram me away from the occult mindset, the way of thinking of just being in a traumatic loop of threat detection over and over again, or you're just looking for who's gonna hurt you next, kind of in a survival mode. The only thing that could really take me out of that was being in the community that I'm in right now, and among you guys, around the closest circle, and even the broader, I don't know, 50 or so people that I'm in contact with at church. That has really conditioned me to warm up and realize that this is a relationship that's not going to be cut off by someone doing something evil. If I mess up, I'm not going to incur a punishment by everybody. They're not going to retaliate and, enforce me to do something, or the mindset is just so incredibly different. And I know it's probably obvious to a lot of people, but being in a community is what healed me, even though I was probably alone for over a year, being filled with the Holy Spirit, praying every day, really disciplined in almost everything except for being a part of a community. And I was really still messed up. I really still had a lot of issues that weren't getting healed, and it was only spending time around people that being in this community that really did anything for me. And that's what brought the lasting change. Those one-off encounters bring the opportunity to heal. It'll take things out of you, but those things can come back. When Jesus said, a demon is cast out of you, it goes to a dry and desolate place. And if your house is not filled, then it'll bring demons more wicked than itself, 7 times more wicked. So I could have had all these encounters, but if I didn't have community, if I didn't have love, if I didn't have a family, then I wouldn't have really stayed healed, and I wouldn't have continued healing.
I don't feel bad, but I know there's a few times when, because we used to work together, I'd be like, you, ping pong table, now. And I'd be like, I need to like, I'm going to clean your clock, sir. And you're probably having a bad day. And I just like, and I'm serious. I'm like, you're going to just get whooped right now. Let's go. And I'd say it like that.
Yeah. No, what you did was, I could tell it was like a friendly,
It's like a bro thing. Like, let's go,
yeah,
dude.
it was a bro thing. I could definitely tell that. It wasn't like legit bullying. Like, even though we would call it bullying.
Yeah, I know, right?
We would call
it's
it
like
bullying,
hazing almost.
but it was like funny bullying. So I understood what was happening.
But I had no idea what this guy you're going through. And I'm like, you, right now, I'm going to clean your clock on this ping pong table and let's go. And you'd be like, all right.
You'd be so good at trash talking. You'd go deep. Like,
man.
You'd go for, like, you'd press the buttons as far as you could.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was part of it too. Just like being around a bunch of guys who are just like screwing around with each other,
Yeah,
but bullying, not really bullying.
Yeah,
but,
it's not really bullying and hazing. It's more of like camaraderie, right? Of
Yeah.
like, because you can definitely go past a line.
You're just competing. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's one of those fun things of like, and then what was funny is I was like way better than you and Jake, and all of a sudden like one day I wake up and I'm getting beat every day, and I'm like, well, how'd this happen?
I think it's because you motivated me to get better than you,
Right.
and then Jake like came along with me, and like we started competing with each other, and now we're all on the same level.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was hilarious. That trash talking, but no, like it's more of like that camaraderie, bro thing. But man, knowing what I know now, what you're going through, it's probably good I didn't know because I wouldn't have acted like that around you, and you know what I mean. But then it wouldn't have been my authentic self,
Right.
too, because I'd have been like tiptoeing too. So I think there's like almost a balance sometime of when it's good to tell people certain things
True.
because they'll react differently around you. Because I think it helped me and your relationship to keep bonding. Me being ignorant, actually, like in a sense, I don't know,
I can see that, I guess.
man. Because if you told me your story at like month one, ain't no way I'd treat you the same way. Like I'd have been like, whoa, I gotta like baby this guy. I gotta like be careful what I say to him. Like, and maybe you should probably, but I don't know. Like,
I needed some of both. Like, I needed some of that like kind of friendly competition, like a little like harsh but still loving.
yeah.
But also having like the softer people who like knew exactly what was going on come and like love me to where I was. You need both.
Yeah,
You
that I
can't
wasn't a
neglect
soft
that.
person with
I
you.
would have gotten, I might have gotten bored if you didn't do that. And
There
I
you go.
only had people being like, "Oh, honey, you okay?"
Yeah.
Like if only people did that, then I might get a little bored.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, you need both. You need both though.
yeah,
And I think that's also what's great about community too, is like everyone has a different aspect and a role and a different way you communicate and talk to them and share things. And if it was the same with everybody, it would actually be boring then, right? Like you have a special relationship with different types of people that bring things out of you, and you can help bring things out of them then.
yeah.
And yeah, so it's cool like knowing your story now and just thinking back on some of the moments that we've had, and we won't get into all of them here, but I'm just like going through my head like, man, I was really like hard on that guy, but it was probably a good thing
Yeah.
in the time.
We can't talk about what happened like at NLE, but you pushing me towards that, I don't think would have happened at all.
Well, that's what I was alluding to,
Yeah.
but I didn't want
Yeah.
to say anything.
No, you're fine. Like I kind of got it. Like there's no way you would have done that, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Because everything that's happened has been a part of the story and how I got here, and I'm very grateful for how it happened. And whether or not like everyone knew what was going on, month one of me meeting them, like you were a part of my deliverance when I first moved here, but like you didn't know what was going on for like 6 months after the young adult group at my church started. And then I share my story because I'm led to, because I had a vision, and then all of a sudden I start going through more deliverance, and you're a part of that. So yeah, even though I was in community, I had a very difficult time getting used to the way people kind of treat you, because I could tell this was right. I could tell this was good. It was very warm and loving, but like I couldn't just change immediately. You know, I couldn't
Yeah.
just choose to be different. So yeah, being in isolation will definitely wear you down over time. That's where the enemy wants you. That's where Satan wants you, is to stay isolated and trapped essentially in your own bubble, because other people see the world in ways that you don't see, and they're going to see things about yourself that you don't see, and you're not going to have the complete picture of family. You're not going to have a right view of God without being in a family, and you're not going to where am I going with this? You're not going to exactly fulfill what he's called you to do either without being a part of a family, because Satan's going to come along and he's going to find that little weak spot where you're strong in a lot of areas, but then you have a couple blind spots that other people don't have. If you were in a community, you'd be taken care of. But if he finds you alone, he'll just go right around your defenses and just poke that little thing that's exposed, and he can entrap you and get you to fall away, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, and where do I begin? I just began actually, but yeah, little middle.
It all started in Minnesota.
It all started in Minnesota, and I don't remember the exact thing that happened, but I know Leah, my wife over here, who's on the switchboard, prayed basically to like wake up spiritually, right? In a sense, before I did. That's correct? Okay, so that's kind of like how it got started, and we ended up moving to Dallas probably because she prayed, legitimately. And so God had this thing in motion, and so we came down to Dallas, and we kind of left everything behind. Like we had a house, we had my immediate family, her immediate family, and we built a business together, and then we parted from that. And I think I was pretty social, but I didn't really have a community of like trust. But I'm a pretty trusting person, so like I tell everybody I just tell people a lot of stuff. Probably shouldn't sometimes, but like I don't know, I'm like, what are you gonna do? I guess, but I'm learning boundaries are really good too, and there's also certain people like I can go deep with, and some people I can't, or I don't think it's healthy, and so I've learned to like have those healthier boundaries. But overall, I'm a very trusting person. Like you kind of have to screw me first before I don't trust you. And it's hurt me a ton, but it's also I've been able to have amazing relationships with people really quick and dive deep. So it goes both ways. But we moved to Texas, and we got into a community with some people, and great people, but it didn't like fit my vibe. Like just like not like from a deep level. And I don't even know what I'm looking at. Like I just think this is normal. Like you just hang out with people and share life, and please don't talk about how tall the corn is, how much water is in the rain gauge.
Yes.
And
please.
We are good. Like that was like my
the rain gauges. So why do people have rain gauges?
Like not that it's a bad thing, but man, it drives me nuts. Like it's like it's hard. Like that's
I don't care how much rain is in the gauge.
Yeah. So I think that's just it's a way though that you grew up. Small talk. It's just a thing, right? So we come here, and I'm not going to get the whole story, but my whole life with my wife and kids get totally flipped upside down, just from the job to the move. It's right during COVID. I don't even know what I'm doing down here. I feel like I know what I'm doing, then I don't. I get a job, and then I lose it, and then I get another thing, and then it goes bankrupt, blah, 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 blah. All these things are happening, right? And I'm trying to, like, find people, and then it's funny because Leah was just sharing her story, actually, about needing community because something happened in her life. And so she prayed, and I think God showed you Storehouse, right? Like on a video? Yeah. She watched this video, and she invited me and the kids to go to church, and I think she didn't know if I was going to go or not, or like what I'd say, because we didn't grow up going to church. I didn't grow up going to church. We like home church stuff. So I think, is that correct? I like how I need to get approval on this stuff.
I grew up going to church. You didn't.
Yeah, but I didn't. But you didn't know if I was going to go with you, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay, so she didn't know, but she needed to get in community and the body and like get plugged in.
You were content. You were happy with life.
I was good, even though all this stuff is going crazy. I'm like, we're all right. Like this is why I asked in a couple episodes we shot ago of like, what do you do with someone that's like, life's good, got a great wife, got kids, even though like things aren't going great. I'm like, I'm happy, I'm good. Like I was like completely blinded that I needed more. Yeah, more of like Jesus. Yeah. Not from a worldly sense more, but like I didn't understand. I'm like, God's real, Jesus is real, he died for me. We're good. I checked the box. And I was very comfortable. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So anyways, we go to Storehouse, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I love this place. People are bouncing, they're singing songs, like my first experience at church.
Yeah.
And I find out later that's not how every church is. I thought that's how like every church is basically. Been to a couple other ones, that I thought were weird, and I thought those were the really weird ones. And so that is a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down another time of how like conversations came up from this, and I was like, oh wow. But back to the community is I met some people that we have mutual connections with at Storehouse there, and builded bonds, and got how real these people were. They're being vulnerable. I was like, hey, these are my kind of people. I love talking about this stuff. Where have y'all been? And so like I kind of dove in, and then I went to the men's retreat. I think it was the second time I went out. I got baptized. I've never been baptized. And I decided to get baptized because like I could do life with these guys, like these types of people at least. And so I got baptized, but it was because of the community of who they were. Like I never felt like it was like, I'm going to witness in front of them. I've never done it. So I could do life with you. So why would I not just do it right here and there? So John Eckert baptized me in the freezing cold because it was it was at the end of the fall, and it was pretty cold. But
Nice.
so that kind of like opened the door for me to like really dive in and get excited about connecting with people and sharing experiences and what are you learning? And then I met Ashley, and then I met you, and then a whole bunch of other people. And I just kind of like fell in love with building life with people, like sharing experiences, talking about what is God doing with you, like share random things that my kids are doing to people, like just, and I don't want to do that with everybody though. Like it's a smaller group of people. And so like I felt like, and I remember telling you this one time, I'm like, oh, I got my people. Like we're good. I don't need anyone else. You remember me telling you that? Yeah. Man, it was like the next day, God's like, nope, 90% of these people got to go. They're not good for you. Not that they're bad people. They're great people. They're just not your people who you're supposed to go like really deep with. And so I think for me, when I think of community, I think of it as like layers. Like I got like my inner circle, which is Leah and my kids. And then I got a circle right outside of that. And then I have a couple, like an onion almost. I have people right outside. But it's very important for my time who I'm spending time with. And I've learned that it's okay that I can't be something for everybody and vice versa. You can't be everything that I might need too. And so you have to figure this out with people because you might want more from somebody than they can give and vice versa, right? And so I saw this play out. I'm been on both ends of this, where I wanted to hang out with someone more and they didn't have the bandwidth or time, or I wasn't their vibe. And I have the same thing in my, like, and I go, wow, okay. And I think a lot of it though is God is putting you with specific people in specific times. And it's interesting because how I look at it is I'm like, I would never have pictured myself being really deep with a few of you guys. Like if I went back in time, I'd be like, no, I doubt that would ever happen. And so I think it's just really intentional to what you said about the isolation, right? Is you can have a ton of acquaintances and friends, but are you really a community? And I think that word, for me, it doesn't mean that things go good all the time. It doesn't mean that there's not fights. It doesn't mean that there's not disagreements. It's at the end of the day, it's like, what is family? It's like you love each other. And so like, I think you have to choose it because you can choose to walk away. So you have to choose to stay too. And people come and go. Every relationship is not forever. There are seasons in it. And that's actually a healthy thing. So I think that's my spiel on it. What do you got over there, sister?
I don't have a whole lot to say, but I mean, welcome to Texas, by the way. Yeehaw.
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 I think it's funny you were talking about hugging and all this stuff, and I'm like, yep, that's what we do.
It's just a southern thing.
Just drink tea and sweet tea and hug everybody.
Yeah.
And say yes, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
sir. All those things. Yeah, but God is the God of community. So it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So he himself is family and he himself is community. And even in creating us, he's like, hey, let's make man in our image to be a part of us. And so when Jesus says in John 17, his last prayer, that he's asking the Father that because of what he's doing, that we're going to become one, right? So make them one. Father, I'm asking they'll become one as we are. So he's literally, this whole story is about a father getting his family back. And we've talked about this on earlier episodes, is that this is what Jesus was doing, was reconnecting us, the Father. So the connection we lost in the garden of family with the living God, of our Creator, of our Father, he gave that back to us. So that's literally what this is the context for which we exist. is in family and in community, right? So I think it's good because a couple things. I mean, you talked about how helpful it is because you didn't have that and like your nuclear family. So God sent you here. And part of that was helping with deliverance and just brotherhood and sister, different things like that. And the same thing for you. It was this like just kind of having these different realizations of not everybody are going to be my people. There's specific people who have certain things at certain times for me. But also learning too with family and community is like, hey, my wife sees this differently than I do, right? So you're together and have like a different perspective on community, which is also, that's huge.
We have a different perspective. Hold on.
Well, no, because you were saying, you literally said
raised.
earlier is that you were like, oh no, this is all
Oh,
fine. I have
yeah,
my
yeah,
wife,
yeah.
I have my kids, I have these things, but she needed that. Right. And she knew that you did too. Right.
Mhm.
And so she understood that is those things. And like you were saying, is almost like praying you into storehouse, which is huge.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that value community in the Bible says is as don't forsake the gathering as the time grows near, because as the shaking is coming and all of these things that are going to really like wreck some shop.
Yeah,
in
as
the
Bobby
earth,
said.
you need people. You absolutely need people. And you also need people not just to be with you, because you would never go into a team sport. So I played soccer, I played basketball. How stupid would I be to walk on the field by myself and be like, nah, guys, I got it. 1v11? Okay. No.
You'd lose every time.
It's not even like, it's like a whole other category. Is it even losing, or is it just like
Annihilation.
Yeah, it's a different category, and it's just foolishness.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Army. I met with one of my friends yesterday who's in the Army. You think she's gonna go out on an assignment by herself? Do you know, that's death. That's an actual death sentence. That's not just like you're an idiot, you're gonna go play a team sport by yourself. Even golfers have caddies, right?
That is, I never thought of that,
That's
but you're
good.
right.
It's not a
That's
solo
good.
sport. It isn't. I'm not getting into all the parallels of sports, but it's a big deal. It would be a very foolish thing to do because it's literally outside of the nature of a human being to be alone. And you're perfectly right, or exactly like spot on, because that's when the enemy attacks you. And my like two biggest attacks were in another country when I was by myself, or when I got home here from Italy. And the Lord was like, don't be alone, don't be alone, don't be alone. Because the enemy was like choking me the freak out, just to be honest. And so, and it's not because I didn't know Jesus. It's not because I'm not covered in the blood. It was because he was literally saying, do not be by yourself, especially right now. Because there is this actual, not just like any type of temptation. It was an actual attack from the kingdom of hell against my life to try to destroy me. And I cannot tell you how real that is. And so you need people, but that doesn't make the person your source, right? Like God is the source, but you still need people, and people are the manifestation. Like, so he comes through you, he comes through you, he comes through you, for me, for each other, and vice versa. So it's the same thing that Father, Son, and Holy Spirit do, is they're constantly like pouring out for each other. So they don't have to rip anything into, I realize we're talking about God and then us, but you know what I mean? Like, but still he's the source. Even for himself, he himself is an aspect of himself is the source. So it's something that you can't take for granted. And also just to have people be like, look, I told my best friend the other day, I was like, look, don't let me off the hook. Like, please don't let me off the hook in terms of just being the spotless bride, and idle words, talking about people, saying negative things about myself. I was like, please set the highest bar for me. And it doesn't mean that there's not grace or forgiveness, but it's like, hey, this is who I want to be and actually who I'm meant to be, but I need you to help me do that, because there are things that I can't see, and there's lies that the enemy has that I need to like root out. But it's love, and you were saying this too, the ultimate deliverance is love, because the truth sets you free. Well, the ultimate truth is you were created by the God of love. So it's love, it's his love that delivers you through his truth, and he uses people as a conduit for that.
Yeah, that thing too is like in your community, it's like that saying, your 5 closest friends is the amount of money you make, your happiness, your all those things. It's the same thing in your community with God. Like if you're not spending time in community intentionally, purposefully getting together to share your life of how your walk with Christ is, like it's going to be harder than it should probably be, because you're not actively engaging with the body.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think there's seasons through it, because like one thing, like we were down here for 5 years. Now we're back in Minnesota. And I know one thing, we're like, we're not going to be going to a regular church every day. And that's still our choice, because the ones up there are like, it's not that they're bad, but oh my gosh, they're so dry. And like, I feel like right now, the season that we're in, we get more just me and Leah just sitting with the boys every Sunday, and they've been amazing conversations and stuff. But I actively want to go just even do corporate worship, right? Just even that, even if it's people I don't know personally, but I know they're fellow believers, I want to go worship with them. Like, and that's something that we've talked about that we're going to go do. It's like 2 hours away, but like it's a drive, but it's a commitment. And so I think that's one thing too, is having a community like that. And everybody doesn't have that. There's a lot of people that don't have like people in their life that are willing to, and I don't want to use the word push, but to more like encourage with your walk with God. And they want it, but they don't, they might not know how to seek it. They might just be in a place in their life where they're like, I actually don't really know a whole lot of people like that. Or they're like stuck in a relationship with their spouse that maybe doesn't want to get actively in a church or actively in a weekly gathering or something, and they don't know what to do, right? And so I think that gets tough, because for me, like, I feel like it's such a needed thing in my life. And I think one thing, I know Leah was worried about this when we went back to Minnesota, like, how am I going to react? Because I'm such a social butterfly, and I like to connect with people and do all these things. And I'm doing really good. Like, I love the season I'm in right now. I'm spending a lot of time with my boys. And like, even Leah made a comment the other day about how I was giggling and laughing with them upstairs, and you were downstairs with your dad. And I was just having a great time with them. And I'm like, you know, this is going to go by so quick for the three boys I got, because they're 10, 12, and 14. And one's almost 13. And I'm like, man, like 8 years, all three of them theoretically could be doing their own life. And I hope they're still like a part of it more. And I really do believe they will be. But like, it goes by so fast. So the season that I'm in right now, I'm really enjoying it. But at the same time, I know it's not forever, and I don't want it to be forever isolated like that, because we're meant to be connected with people. And we are finding some people up there that we're meeting with and connecting. But I do miss all y'all down here, because I've connected and bonded in different ways that I know are very special to me.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing, we'll wrap it up here, but maybe you have something to say, but the opposite of that too. And so I've done a lot of like coaching, young life, things like that, and telling kids specifically in middle school, you know, with girls and moving into high school, is you better choose, like, ask God who your friends are and who your people are, because you can just hang out with anybody. But if you just hang out with anybody, if you just date any guy, and obviously vice versa for the guys, if you just date any girl and hang out with any guy, like group of guys, you're going to fight demons you were never meant to fight. You're going to be thrust into battles you were never meant to have, that you were never meant to deal with, because you didn't surround yourself with God's people and people who are looking out for you. And it's not like, you know, you're talking about, speaking of best friends, but
He's going.
Tries again.
That's right. But so the same way that all of us in relationship and family, even you guys being in Minnesota now, so I have a covering from y'all just from your relationship with the Lord and the love we share, right? And vice versa. But, and I'm not asking you to share about this, and I don't even think it's the time, but we can all think of like certain people in our lives who actually cause a lot of chaos. And it was like, well, we're Christians, we're supposed to love everybody. Yes, you're not supposed to hang out with everybody, and neither did the Lord. But and just being really intentional about who your community is going to be. And it's cool because all three of us, even though I am from Texas, I'm from Fort Worth, this is Dallas, whatever, and it is different. But I asked God, so the Lord brought you to Storehouse, he brought you guys to Storehouse. I literally asked him, where are your kingdom people? And I know Christians. That's pretty much, you know, like that's my whole life. I was born and raised in the church by the grace of God. But so actually seeing community done really well. I'm like, where are your like real legit people that are just really after your heart? Because I knew that I wasn't in a place where I was like, I know that my spirit is, I want to be like called deeper and to God in the deeper things of God. And I probably couldn't have said that at the moment, but I literally asked, we're your kingdom people, and God sent me to Storehouse also for you guys, to meet you guys. So yeah, it's good. So grateful for the God of family, the God of community. Do you have anything else to share?
Yeah, I guess the only last points I would have is that you can be around a community, be in a community, and still kind of like distant and not open up. And that was kind of my I connected with some people when I first became a part of this church family, but I stayed really distant from the vast majority of everybody and didn't say anything. And I only communicated really like when someone asked me something first, or as a very tactical way of speaking. So like just saying the practical information of what was happening in my life without really sharing deep things about what was going on, not sharing anything in my heart, not sharing anything about what I believed, just like, this is happening, this is why, and like didn't talk about much else. So if you want the benefits of community, if you want to be in a community, I think it's just important to know that you actually have to open up to other people. You can't just be there and like
Requires vulnerability.
Yeah, requires vulnerability. You can't just be there and like exist around other people and then you all of a sudden are covered. You actually have to build relationships with others. And that's a big problem too, is I think a lot of people are actually in communities. They're in church communities at least. And a lot of them don't know each other. They don't know much about the person sitting next to them. Like, I know that coming from the Catholic Church too, is you don't really get real vulnerable. Maybe if you're like really devoted to going to confession, you'll share a lot with the priest. But like this whole community thing with other people it's in your family, that doesn't exist in pretty much every church. Is like you just go there, spend time around other people, you go through like the motions, but you don't open up and build like deep relationships. Yeah. Mostly because people just haven't seen it done before and they don't really know what to do. And they just kind of like go through the motions that they were taught.
I think I'll add on this, and we can. I know we want to get going here, but I think a lot of churches are intentional of trying to get small groups going and doing these things. The thing that we kind of did, I feel like, happened very organically with the group that we hang out with. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had someone say something to you, right, Ashley, that someone said like, "Wow, you guys have something special."
Yeah, an elder in our church.
Yeah,
It was like, I've seen y'all.
And the crazy thing is, though, is there's really not anything crazy special about. It's just more intention of trying to do life together or share things. But like, we're all just messed up and jacked up in our own ways anyway. We just love each other. But we're intentional about it, I think. And it's not perfect. And there's seasons and there's things that aren't great and there's things that happen. But I do think a lot of churches try to make it happen, but you can't force people to get connected.
Alex called it assigned seating.
Assigned seating.
I remember when you said that. He was
Small
like picking
groups.
small groups is like
Like
having an assigned seat when somebody else assigns it for you. But I like the, hey God, like who is it that you want, that you have for me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not an arranged marriage,
They did a lot of that back in the day, didn't they?
What?
Arranged marriages.
Oh, I'm sure. Sorry, I wasn't trying to get off on that, but yeah, I love it. You said that assigned seating, because we definitely would not have all been assigned together. So I'm grateful for it. But anyway, community.
No, community.
Love, family. All right. That's our episode on community and why it's important. You can find us at Golden Vessels on Spotify, YouTube, possibly Apple Podcasts, depending on how this goes. Thanks for watching. See you next time.